Hello, welcome back. In the last episode, we talked about conscious experiences, and we ended with the question, is there something more to experiencing color than just the physical knowledge of color vision? If you haven't seen the episode yet, do check it out. So in this episode, let's start by looking at what really happens when we experience something. Try rubbing your fingers together. What you experience is a sense of touch. But what's actually happening at your fingers is an interaction between the particles on your skin. The feeling of touch is just the way we experience it. So in reality, the world out there is just a combination of particles and energy. We don't know what this is actually like. We only have access to our experience of it, and that forms the world as we know it. Coming back to experiencing color, again there is actually no color outside, just some particles and what we call wavelength of light. This interacts with our body, producing some neural activity in the brain. Now the next step, the idea of color, is what we project onto the world. It is our personal subjective experience. And this is where we see a jump from the objective physical world to the subjective world in our minds. So how do these subjective experiences arise? Why are we conscious living beings? This is a question that we have struggled with for ages. Our consciousness is at once the most familiar and the least understood aspect of our lives. But why is consciousness so hard to explain? To get a feel for this, let's look at a few popular ideas from neuroscience about consciousness. The most popular approach in neuroscience has been to find correlations between different brain states and conscious experiences. These correlations are then used to find the source of consciousness in the brain. But how much can correlations tell us? For example, anesthesia has been used for over 170 years now and it works. But we still don't know how exactly anesthesia suspends consciousness. One other popular approach is to explain consciousness as a function of the brain. For example, we usually have a lot of information flowing into the brain through all our senses. How does the brain put these together? And how is the useful information shared with the other parts of the brain? The global workspace theory says that there is a part of the brain where all the information comes together. We can think of this as a stage of sorts, where the audience is the rest of the brain. The bright part of the stage is consciousness. When an information is in the dark, it is unconscious and the audience cannot see it. But when it comes into the spotlight, it becomes conscious and it is now shared with the audience. So according to this theory, consciousness is a function that helps information be shared with the rest of the brain. Another interesting approach is the higher order theory. Imagine you're looking at an apple. This creates a thought of the apple in your mind. Now you can also have another thought that you are aware of the apple. This is called a higher order thought. According to the higher order theory, the first thought is unconscious, and having the second higher order thought is what makes an experience conscious. Now, how well do these ideas explain consciousness? Well, think about this. When we look at an apple, we have a conscious experience of the apple, which makes us say, I see red. But it is easily possible to think of another being looking at the same apple, saying, I see red, but not having any conscious experience. It seems possible for an other being to perform all the functions that we do without really being alive inside. This is what makes consciousness so hard to explain. For example, in global workspace theory, all the information can be integrated and shared in the brain without there being any conscious experience. As for the higher order theory, think about this. Just as how the first thought can exist without a conscious experience, it is also possible for the higher order thought to exist without someone experiencing that thought. This tells us that just fitting consciousness into one of our brain processes doesn't solve the mystery. Because if we can perform all of these processes without being conscious, then why do we have it? Why aren't we just brilliant robots? Philosopher David Chalmers in 1994 shook up the existing views on consciousness by pointing out this deeper mystery of consciousness. Why do we have conscious experiences at all? Chalmers called this the hard problem of consciousness, suggesting that we would need a radically different approach to even begin addressing this hard problem. But what kind of radically different approach? Could consciousness just be an accidental byproduct of evolution? Or is there something more fundamental that we are missing here? Tune in to my next episode to find out. Thanks for watching.